I Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Superheroes, Movies, and Superhero Movies. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzo.
And today we're talking about Aliens, released in 1986, directed by James Cameron, written by James Cameron, from a story by James Cameron, David Giler, and Walter Hill, starring Sigourney Weaver, Michael Biehn, Lance Henriksen, Carrie Henn, Paul Reiser, and the late, great Bill Paxton. Like I said, this was released in 1986. I obviously did not see this in the theater, but I do have, John, I have a vivid memory of seeing it for the first time.
Okay.
Do you recall seeing it for the first time?
So we recently did the Alien episode, and I, mentioned that fifth grade. This was like Alien was the first movie that my dad literally took me to Blockbuster and said, "Let's get a rated R horror movie," and Alien was the one that I picked. Pretty sure the next weekend I invited my friend to spend the night again, and we went and got Aliens and watched it the next weekend. So I don't have a distinct memory of. All I remember is that I thought it was incredible, and and I thought it was even better than the first one.
So how old were you?
I was probably about 11.
Oh, wow.
10 or 11.
I think I was a little bit older than that. So I was at my friend's house, and his dad and little brother and I were going to go see Twister. And we actually drove to the movie theater to go see Twister. This was probably opening weekend whenever Twister came out. And it was sold out, so we couldn't get a ticket. So we ended up going to Blockbuster, and they chose Aliens. They had seen it. I had not. Maybe I said something about not having seen it. I don't know. And they were like, "Well, we got to get Aliens." So they rented. So this was.
I bet Bill Paxton came up.
Oh, maybe that probably was.
Yeah.
Probably was a connection there, and I didn't even think about that. But yeah, we rented Aliens, and I remember really liking it, but I also remember being kind of freaked out by it too. So I was a little bit older than, let's see, 96. I would have been, depending on what part of the year it was probably summer, so I was probably 12 going on 13. But I remember specifically the scene with the Queen and Bishop getting stabbed. Like that kind of just the imagery from that and him spitting up all the liquid and everything, that kind of stuck with me. It kind of freaked me out a little bit.
So in the last episode, or the Alien episode we did, I talked about how when I was around that age, I would write these stories, looking back, I think it was, just being extremely precautious. But my teachers, for more than one grade, I think it was around third through fifth, had brought up, but it was mainly my fifth grade teacher that was talking about my graphic detail, and when I would write fiction stories of sci-fi and everything. And I mentioned that watching Alien was kind of after that time where I got to finally watch these, I stopped writing like that. And it was actually watching this again and seeing Bishop get ripped in half was literally almost like the image of one of the things that I had written right before seeing these movies, of I literally made it a robot in my story so that it wouldn't be blood.
Right.
And I could have this
so you
robot
get away with
ripped
it
in half.
Yeah.
And it was so reminiscent, but so that's what I was saying was, I was going to say that was the scene that actually probably made me say, you know what? I don't need to write this stuff anymore because I've got it. There it is. What I don't need to write it. I'll just watch.
Just watch Aliens.
Yeah, I got it out of my system.
That's funny.
So,
did you ever get in trouble for those stories or anything?
No. It was just hey, you might want to.
Stories are kind of violent.
Yeah, might want to, tone it down. And
yeah.
But it was weird because, like I said, it was I remember having the excitement to write out, because like I had seen Jurassic Park, and I remember that scene in Jurassic Park where it's Nedry and you have that mud coming down. And I remember thinking, oh gosh, please don't show that, like,
right.
And it just stayed mud. And I always wondered, like, even now watching that scene, if there was like supposed to be like some intestines or something that like spill out. The studio was like, no, we're just going to keep it the mud.
PG-13 here, PG-13.
But, I just had kind of that excitement around that time of like wanting Mortal Kombat was out.
Right.
Like, it's just that graphic violence was something that I was intrigued with. And, like I said, it was kind of like once I was able to literally every weekend go to Blockbuster and be like, hey, we're getting a Stephen King movie. I didn't have, I guess, that it didn't make it as kind of, like territory
that
I had to create.
As much. Right,
yeah.
I think I was the same way. I remember in third grade drawing pictures, and like I was not a very good, artist. So it was like usually just a guy standing there like straight, but he had like knives and stuff stuck into his body and like blood was coming out and everything. And I just drew like a few of those and like stuck them in a desk or whatever. And I remember it wasn't our third grade teacher. It was like a third grade like teacher assistant type thing or something. But she was like cleaning out the desk and she saw them. And all she did was just like glare at me and be like, really? And then I think she may have like tossed them out or crumpled them up or something. But I was thinking like nowadays I would have been sent to
yeah, you're right. For and not just like once.
Right.
Probably have like reoccurring visits, like, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, like,
right.
like, but yeah, you're right. Typically it's just kids being kids.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So when you saw Aliens, you had already seen Alien.
Yeah. Like I said, it was literally, I'm sure the next weekend we got, if not sooner, we might have gone, like, it might have been a Friday night, and then Saturday, literally the next day, we were like, we're going back to Blockbuster. We're getting the second.
We're getting part 2.
That very well might have happened. So yeah, it was very quick back to back for me.
Nice. This was the first movie of the franchise I'd seen, and I don't think I watched any of the other ones until I was an adult. And I don't know why that is, because I liked Aliens, but I really don't think I watched Alien or Alien 3 or Alien Resurrection until I was working at Blockbuster, and I think I rented them.
But if you think about that, you saw it in 96, right?
Yeah.
And what year did you start working at Blockbuster?
2002. This is about 6 years later.
Oh, okay. That's longer than I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a decent gap. I was thinking, I was going to say, but when you go back in time, it's like really, it felt like it was forever, but I bet it was like only 3 years.
Right.
6, yeah.
6 years is a decent time. I mean, it is weird though how, I guess, like time just moves slower when you're a kid. Because I do think about that sometimes, about how, what was it? It might have been like Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal or something, right? Silence of the Lambs came out in 91 and Hannibal came out in either 99 or 2000. And I remember thinking it was like such a long time in between movies. But really it wasn't that. It was like 8 or 9 years.
Yeah.
It wasn't really like that big of a gap.
Well, think about this. When you were in high school, 80s music was like barely over a decade old.
Right.
How is that even possible?
I don't know. That is super weird too. Yeah. My sister and I talked about how she was like what did she say? 1990 will always be like just 10 years ago. It was like it's never more than just 10 years ago. Like that's the fact that it's like 30 years ago now is just, it's wrong. So one of the coolest things, and I didn't, obviously, since I saw this movie first, I didn't know this. I remember they had to, so they kind of, obviously this is a sequel. And so I remember watching Aliens with my friends and his dad, my friend and his dad, and they had to explain certain things to me so I would understand what was going on. Like I remember in the beginning of the movie when she gets all freaked out by Bishop. She's like, you never told me there was an android on this mission or whatever.
Right.
they had to explain to me, about Ash in the first movie, and so I knew I couldn't remember who the character was going into Alien, but I knew there was an android in the movie. So they spoiled some stuff for the first movie. But anyway, what I was going to say was, I like how this movie basically takes place exactly where Alien left off, although it is 57 years into the future, technically.
Yeah, so that's also interesting because in that sequence, it turns out to be a dream.
Right.
So
I wrote that note, actually. Yeah.
So that's where the information's given to her that it's been 57 years. I think it has been. I think that transitioned, like you were seeing stuff that happened, or at least information she had actually gotten, and she was dreaming about it.
Right.
And then she wakes up from it.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I was like, that's, I've never questioned that it has been 57 years. But watching it this time, I was like, I could see people arguing that it hasn't been 57 years.
Right.
Because that was, it is a dream scene, essentially. And so I almost wish there was like just a simple line of dialogue or something, where somebody says something about, well, a lot's changed in 57 years, just to kind of confirm that it has been 57 years.
So they do kind of. I don't remember who the head honcho of the board was, but he mentions to them about, or he mentions to Ripley about the colonies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
And that it takes decades, I think, to
terraform the That's true. And I do remember thinking that because there were no colonies on LV 426
right
when she left, and now there are. So that obviously means time has passed. There also is a deleted scene. It's either a deleted scene or it's in the special edition. I watched the theatrical version this time, so I can't remember. I think it's a deleted scene, but there's a scene where Ripley actually talks to her daughter, and her daughter is now older than Ripley is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so, which I think was kind of neat because it kind of plays into her relationship with Newt later, she didn't get to see her daughter grow up, and so now it's like...
But did she... So wait, she had a daughter...
It's not mentioned in the first movie.
I guess it doesn't... Yeah.
That might be part of the reason they cut it out.
Right.
But it was like her daughter comes to... It's like an actual face-to-face meeting. Her, she sees her daughter. I think it's a face-to-face meeting. Like I said, it's a deleted scene. I think I've only watched it once. I don't remember it exactly, but I do remember thinking it was interesting that her daughter was older than her. So that was another confirmation that
it's an interesting idea, but I think I can see why they would take it out because it really doesn't have anything to do with the story.
Right. The only thing I could think of is that it was supposed to
confirm the time and kind of give you, it's kind of, I think it was supposed to be a moment where it's like you get to see like what it would be like to have slept for 57 years. So you can kind of put yourself in her shoes. But I think got the hint or the idea by hearing it. So
right. And I don't think, and I was gonna say I feel like it does kind of play into the relationship with Newt, but it's not necessary because I think her and Newt, that whole relationship is established fine, and it's so completely believable that she wants to protect Newt and everything.
Their chemistry is just fantastic.
Yeah.
Who's the girl that plays Newt? Carrie
Henn. Yeah.
Like she did amazing.
She does do a great job. I was curious watching it this time because there's a couple of lines where I was just double checking her name. Yeah, Carrie Henn. There's a couple lines where she almost has an accent, and so I looked it up, and she was born in Florida. But I guess
funny because one of my sons asked if she was British.
Yeah.
So
she was born in Florida, but apparently she spent part of her childhood in England.
Okay.
And so she does have a little bit of an accent on certain words.
Yeah.
And so it kind of comes out in a couple of her lines. But yeah, she does. No, Newt does a great job.
Yeah. And like I said, the chemistry between her and Ripley is
Yeah.
It's just like and Ripley to her, like you can just see, that she is the protective mother,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting. I just thought of this. You literally have mother against mother
Yeah, that's true.
at the end, which
Yeah.
is kind of cool. And the humans win.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, what'd you think of this movie?
I mean, I think this movie's amazing. It's I always go back and forth. It's hard for me to choose which one I like more, this one or the first one, because they're so different. And I think James Cameron did an amazing job of.
Did Cameron write this?
He wrote the screenplay, and then there's two other guys who were credited with a story credit. So James Cameron, David Giler, and Walter Hill have the story credit, but then James Cameron wrote the screenplay. But the movies are so different. And what I was going to say was James Cameron did such a good job of, doing exactly what you probably should do for a sequel, which is not just redoing the first movie, but expanding on the first movie and giving us something we haven't seen before and making it fresh and exciting. And I mean, the first movie is a horror film essentially, and this one is, you could still kind of maybe argue it's got horror elements to it, but it's more of an action movie.
Yeah, it's almost like a blending of action and horror.
Yeah,
kind of like Terminator.
Yeah,
which is ironically James Cameron again. So
right, and this was only James Cameron's third movie, and this was the movie he did after Terminator.
Right.
And so he had two pretty big hits back to back, Terminator and then Aliens. He was doing pretty well. Although I remember reading somewhere that James Cameron had to fight with the studio a lot on this movie. Like, this movie was actually very difficult, I think, for him to make.
It does not show at all. It does not show that, that this movie was difficult. It's so smooth.
Yeah.
And I was actually trying to look up and see, because this came out in 86?
86, yeah.
Okay. Because I was like, Terminator was 84, and then and Alien was 80?
79, I think.
That's right.
So it's actually a good chunk of time between movies.
Yeah.
I never thought about that.
Yeah. And I imagine just James Cameron, obviously, I would assume, of course, he didn't write the story.
Well, he co-wrote it.
Right. Okay. He did. I thought
Yeah.
he was just screenplay credit.
Story by James Cameron, David Giler, Walter Hill.
Okay. Yeah, there it is. Okay, never mind then. I take this back. So I would imagine James Cameron watched Alien, and you know how he kind of has talked about he had the idea for Avatar for so long. And
right, yeah.
He obviously had this desire to create, just an alien sci-fi kind of reality. And I would imagine he watched Alien and was like, that was incredible. I'm going to do something with that and build a world.
Right.
And that's what happened. Granted, we just get a small glimpse of, an infested colony, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But
so much more than what we got in the first movie was literally one alien.
Right. And now we have
a
species that we're having to try to defend ourselves from.
Right.
With Marines, these are like best warriors.
Right.
And they're just being taken out. That's what I sent you a text, asking why are movies not like this, or movies like this not made anymore? And, you mentioned that a lot of computer work, and that was something I wrote down in my notes was, because of the technology at the time and the limitations, you don't get a lot of screen time looking at aliens.
Right.
They're really quick shots. They're not doing anything because it's, you don't see any aliens walking.
Right.
You'll see the most of the movement you'll see of an alien is them coming off of a wall, or lots of it was
standing up. Yeah.
Yeah, standing up, or getting blown up. Like, is really the only time
Right.
you would ever see like the bottom portion of an alien. And I think it was unintentional, but I think the fact that they couldn't stay on aliens like for a long time
Yeah.
and focus, because they wanted to get the shot away so that the audience couldn't
You wouldn't go,
notice.
that's just a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think the quick takes made them so much more mysterious to us,
Right.
that
It's scarier. Yeah.
Yes, it just really made it more like a intense and stressful situation, because you're not able. It made it more chaotic, and it also lets the brain do a lot of the work for you, and your brain is going to be your friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your brain is not going to make the movie look bad if you're not given the information. If you have to make the rest of the movie in your mind, you're going to actually make it as cool as possible, because you want to enjoy. So when you're kind of left to fill in the gaps, I think a lot of times that's a major benefit, and this movie kind of makes you do it.
Right. Yeah, I noticed that too watching it, that the aliens, so many shots of the aliens are actually very quick, and you get, other than maybe like the close-ups of the alien where like the little mouth comes out.
Right. And the suits look amazing, so that's fine.
Right.
It's not like a motion. It's literally, though, but like you said, as far as getting around the room or whatever, like, they didn't have that ability to really make this. So anyway, but yeah, the suits look fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think about it too, just like when I think about like why can't they make movies like this anymore, I think about the production design too, like the vehicles and the sets and like the atmosphere and everything. Nowadays, like, look at James Cameron's Avatar. Like 99% of that movie was made in a computer. You get onto a Pandora, and I'm pretty sure the big. I remember there's this. I think the beginning. Again, I think it's like the Marines. They're on a big transport ship, and they get off, and they're on Pandora, and they're walking around. I'm pretty sure the ship is CG, and like maybe the ramp was real. So they're walking off a ramp, but then like the entire background and everything is all CG. And as good as it looks, you can just tell that was made in a computer. It doesn't have that texture to it. It doesn't have the I don't know how you describe it, but I mean, you could just tell it wasn't actually there on set in front of the camera.
Right.
Whereas with Aliens, all that stuff, I mean, they didn't have the computer graphics weren't there yet, and so everything had to be done in camera. Even like there's a scene, I forget now, it's in the beginning of the movie, I think. Oh, it's the very beginning of the movie when they discover Ripley on her ship in her cryo sleep or whatever. The salvagers send in like this kind of like camera type thing, and it's shooting like the blue light across the room,
Mm-hmm.
And there's like the smog, or there's kind of like the smoke machine type stuff, so you get like the cool effect. That would be done in a computer nowadays. Like that would be CG probably, but that was obviously something on set, and it looks just so cool.
Yeah,
with that blue light going through the haze, So yeah, that's what kind of always. I mean, I totally understand why movies are made with computers. Why they do a lot of stuff. I mean, it's probably cheaper and easier now, and it's and you can make it look exactly how you want it to look. Obviously there's limitations and to everything being practical, but I just think these practical movies from the 80s and 90s are just amazing.
Well, the other thing that I think really goes into it is how believable it was, because it was the first time we were seeing anything like this.
Mm-hmm.
And you had stories, all throughout history of, things supernatural, whatever. And then, of course, in the 1900s, we get film, and by the 80s, we're now experimenting with. Well, I mean, they had been for a while. You know, you have like early movies like what's it called, Metropolis?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The sci-fi movie.
Yeah. So we were now getting to where we could start to really do it, and you had such creative minds that had ideas that had not been presented to a mass audience yet. So, like, you know, we did Terminator, right? Yeah, we did. Like, we were talking about in Terminator how just original of an idea of there being an assassin. Spoiler alert for Terminator if you haven't seen it. Coming through time, and he's virtually indestructible, you know, robot. Like, who? This is stuff that people just had never even. You had to watch Star Trek,
right,
to have any kind of concept of anything like that. Now you go mention Terminator to anyone, even if they haven't seen the movie, I'm sure they've heard and know what a Terminator is.
Right.
So all of these ideas had never been explored before, especially in a visual sense where they could show you on a screen and have it just right there. Now everything's been done, and I hate saying it. And you know, we'll get a few slip throughs of new ideas here and there that will, you know, be cool, like the Matrix, if we're lucky, or, you know, address just those things but for the most part, it's so hard now to come up with something that we don't compare to something we've already seen that has been done already so well. And Aliens is one example I would give.
Yeah. That's the one thing that kind of, because even in 99 with The Matrix, you brought up The Matrix, there was so much that was still practical in that movie too. There was a lot of computer graphics in that movie as well, but the trailer for the new Matrix, which I think does look great, it has that, especially like the very first shot of the trailer is like a neighborhood or something, you know? And you can just tell that it's at least enhanced by a computer. Like the skyline doesn't look real to me. And maybe that's the point, because it's the Matrix.
I was going to say, yeah.
But that's not how the Matrix looked in the first Matrix.
Right.
So,
because people that didn't know, they wanted it to be a huge twist when you find out, oh my gosh,
And so maybe they're playing on that, and maybe they're playing on the fact that, you know, now everybody knows it's the Matrix. And so they can kind of make it look a little more fake or a little more whatever. But I'm really intrigued by this new Matrix, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah,
I hope it doesn't suck, but we'll see.
I'm not betting any money one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll be open-minded.
I feel like it could go either way. You know, it could either be incredible, or it could be real bad. But I don't know. So anyway, the Marines. I'm glad you brought up the Marines. So that's, you know, where we're introduced pretty early on to Michael Biehn's character, and there's an actor from The Shawshank Redemption whose name I can't remember, and Bill Paxton, who might be one of my favorite characters in the movie.
He definitely has a lot. Like he's kind of the narrator, you know?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Game over, man.
That's the best line. That is his most quotable line easily. And I love that his voice cracks in it. You know? Game over, man. Yeah. Game over. I mean, he's such a coward, but at the same time, it's like, he's how we would be in that situation. You know, it's like, you know, I'd be saying the exact same stuff as him. You know, I'd be losing it. And we see Hudson's, cowardice, I guess you could say, right at the beginning when Bishop puts his hand over his and does the knife trick, you know.
Yes,
and he's just going, oh, you know.
Right. Once again, us.
Right. Yes. Exactly. Right. Basically, Hudson is the connection to the audience. You know, it's no. But I love Bill Paxton in this movie. I think he's fantastic. Michael Biehn is, of course, the Corporal Hicks, the stoic, one of the best like character moments for Hicks, in my opinion, is when they are going down towards the planet and there's the rough air and like you see like the transport vehicle like kind of shaking and everybody's getting kind of nervous, and they're like kind of tightening their seatbelts or whatever it is that they're doing, and it cuts to Michael Biehn and he's just asleep. He's just sleeping through the whole thing, and I thought that was a really good character choice. Whoever came up with that,
it kind of reminds like. What else has he been in? Like besides Terminator, and
Aliens.
Yeah, and Aliens.
Was he in The Abyss? Did he
also
was
in
do
The
Abyss?
Yeah, I have not seen that. I was actually looking up kind of his stuff after watching this movie, and apparently, he's said that he had like a drinking problem that he says really just affected his career. Yeah.
He has done like, I honestly couldn't tell you what he has done between, apparently he's in The Rock. I don't know if I totally remember him in that. But like between this / The Abyss and, Planet Terror, that Grindhouse movie that Robert Rodriguez did, which he was in that. I don't really know what he's done in between that. I know he's probably popped up here and there, but yeah, that makes sense that he might have essentially been maybe blacklisted for a little while. Maybe his drinking caused some problems on set or something.
Yeah, people didn't want to work with him anymore. What he was kind of hinting at. Yeah, so but yeah, he his character fantastic. To me it's reminiscent of Kyle Reese, at least. I noticed his calmness. Like Kyle Reese was a very calm, we're being chased by a killer robot, but I'm going to don't freak out. Right. And Hicks is very much the same way. I actually noticed it was in the scene where she's just Ripley has gone and rescued the remaining survivors from the first attack, and you remember she drives in after Gorman.
Yeah,
he's like freaking out
or something.
Yeah, and he's great too. Like the casting in this is so good. She just busts out of there, and it was almost like the Predator moment where I don't remember the guy's name in the movie, but he had the gun, like the mini gun, and they were like calling his name, like telling him to stop because he was just in a daze. She's just kind of doing the same thing. She's just driving, and Hicks just, instead of freaking out at her, he gets her to calm down and just talks her out of it. And he does it again. I wrote it down actually because I thought it was a really cool character trait. Oh yeah, it's like when who was the Burke? It was when Burke was telling them, we don't want to nuke this place, because he wanted, the money.
Yep.
And he calls Hicks a grunt, and his reaction is not, aggressive, in your face, and it was calm but confident, and he just says, because he calls him a grunt, and then he goes, "No offense," and his response was just none taken. But that stare back,
right.
Yeah, it was just another calm moment. So that's something I really liked about Hicks as the leader. Was that he wasn't like the Rambo,
right. Yeah,
but he had control through his calm, kind of aspect. It was really cool.
It's actually kind of a shame that Michael Biehn had a drinking problem that maybe ruined his career, because he could have really gone on to be quite the action star, I think,
Yeah.
In the 80s, in early 90s, it was like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. Those were your kind of action stars. So he doesn't, like, in terms of body size and stuff, doesn't quite fit that bill. But, neither did Bruce Willis before Die Hard came out. And I think Michael Biehn could have made some really cool movies. Kind of, he could have been quite the action star, I really think. So it's a shame. But I'm glad we got the movies that we did, or these movies with him,
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of like what I was saying, though. Like you said, he didn't have the finesse of those other people, but he like brings he's the leader, Like,
right? Yeah.
He kind of just has a commanding presence about him. So
yeah.
What is the moment? What would you say is the moment where you I'll just actually no, we'll just talk about it because it's not the moment, but it's actually before the moment, and I realized, oh yeah, there's that one, and that's the scene where Newt is being put to sleep, and you have the face hugger.
Oh yeah,
like
where they're stuck in the room with the face hugger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that is before. Let's just talk about it, and then we'll talk about the other
I always
movie.
forget just how terrible Carter Burke is in this movie. Like, not
Right.
not the Paul Reiser's an amazing actor,
Right.
doing a great job, but like
character, yeah,
exactly. The character's
just a scumbag.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I always forget. Like, I know he is, but I forget just how evil he is, because I've seen this movie maybe half a dozen times, or maybe a little more, and I always forget that he is the one that like locked him in that room, and you see them waving on camera, and he turns that monitor off, and then turns to Michael Biehn like, what were we saying? It's like he just such an evil character. I always forget about it.
I do
when
too.
I see that, when I see him turn that monitor off and then turn to
because I think I've seen the movie maybe about the same amount of time, like you said, about maybe half a dozen times or something. So
right.
It's kind of like you said, always. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of makes your blood boil. You're like, come on. And then when they get saved, and Sigourney Weaver goes through that whole speech, she was like, this is how he was going to get an alien past quarantine, by having one of us be, or both of us have, being impregnated, or whatever you want to call it. And Hicks says something like, he's like, yeah, but we would know about it. And she was like, well, he would have messed with your pods and had you guys die, on the trip back, malfunction sleeping. And I think Hudson is like, gets so offended. He's like, this, I can't remember what he calls him. He calls him probably a very mean name. But Carter Burke is like, listen to yourself. You guys you're crazy, but that's exactly what he was going to do.
Right.
It's especially because then even later, I forget exactly, what's going on, but they're obviously being chased by an alien, and he makes a run for it, and Newt and Sigourney Weaver, or Newt and Ripley, are running down the kind of this hallway towards the door, and she's like, Carter, wait, and Carter just closes the door on him. I mean, he only cares about himself, clearly. And he also just lies to people straight to their face. Like in the very beginning of the movie,
that's right.
He tells Ripley, he gives her his word that they are not going to bring any specimens back. They are strictly going to LV-426 to destroy the aliens.
And he has like this natural, like, innocent, like, you can,
Paul Reiser was a great choice to play the character.
This guy's not going to, stab me in the back.
He's like a lovable, like Paul Reiser is like this lovable, guy, and he's like, what? Who, me? That kind of thing.
Right.
What? Who, me?
Right.
And you believe it, until you realize he's a lying scumbag. That's like perfect casting, really.
My next moment would be the one that I remember the most. So when I remember seeing Aliens for the first time, the scene that pops in my head is when Hicks is lifting the panel of the ceiling.
Oh yes,
because the radar has, or the
radar has him at like 6 meters, and Ripley's like, that's impossible. That's inside the room,
right?
And he's like, that's what it's saying, man. And so
Right.
Hicks has this idea like, wait, hold on a second. And he pushes up that ceiling panel, and that's one of the best shots in the movie. You see those aliens, just all crawling, and oh god, it's like
that's
freaky.
Yes, and that's why I remember, because I remember when that shot came, my heart just was like, I remember being in sheer like, oh, what? They're dead,
right? Oh, it's over, game over, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, that shot, and then there's another shot with Newt. When she falls into,
yes,
I think she falls down that like slide thing, and she's in the water, and she's like waiting for Ripley, and then you just see that alien behind her rise out of the water.
Yeah.
That shot is incredible as well.
And I forgot how like I remembered like knowing that was coming, because it keeps her down there for a little bit, and even knowing that it's coming, the tension was there, because they do it again with like the radar, like it's like close.
Mm-hmm.
And it's showing like Ripley and Hicks, and then it cuts to Newt, and like it doesn't even give you a second to like be like, oh, there's going to be an alien coming out, because like, you know, you've been waiting this whole time. But also the music, like with James Horner, like so good. I heard this is like, I would imagine one of the first times, if it wasn't done in Terminator, that that music was like done with, you know how you have like that metal sledgehammer like kind of sound.
Yeah.
And like, I would imagine this was probably around the time that started being used, because like I said, he probably invented it. If he didn't,
probably did. Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
But such a cool effect, and really sets the mood. So you've got all that tension, and then it cuts to Newt, and literally the tail like just looks so good coming out of there, and it's all you know, it's all practical, but like you were saying, definitely an iconic shot right there.
Yep. I'm glad you brought up the score by James Horner, because I wanted to talk about that too. The music is incredible, but at the same time, it's like there isn't like a major theme in the movie that like I can whistle right now. You know,
exactly. It's just music.
It's just, and it's perfect for the scene and everything. You know, the music is awesome in it. I have the soundtrack on my phone, but yeah, it's not like Jurassic Park, you know, or something that has, you know, you hear it and you go, oh, that's Jurassic Park. Like if you were to play some aliens right now, I'd go, this sounds really familiar, but I don't know if I'd be able to place it. But in the context of the movie, like when you're watching, especially the scenes towards the end of the movie, like I remember thinking that, you know, when she's fighting the queen and stuff, I was like, God, the music in this scene is so good.
Right.
And
everything, because you got for especially scenes like that, you have to have the music synced up with the cinematography and the lighting. Like, this is cinematic gold.
Mm-hmm.
This is it goes in the category of several other movies, but not many, that is just like, how did they make everything fit so well?
Right.
The Queen, you brought up the Queen, like, so Owen was watching this with me, and I thought he had seen it, because I watched it literally a couple months ago, because Michael had been begging me to watch Aliens.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons, if it wasn't on our list already, why we chose to do it. It probably was on our list. I don't remember.
I think it was, yeah.
But anyway, after we watched Alien, he was like, I wanted to see Alien, because I told him about Alien vs. Predator. He hadn't seen Predator yet. He hadn't seen Aliens. And he was like, I want to see Alien vs. Predator. I was like, well, first you got to see Aliens.
You got to hold on. You can't just jump to that.
And then we're going to see Predator.
Right.
But
you got to watch all the good ones before you can watch the bad ones.
But I figured Owen had watched that with me, and he was laying in here with me last night as we were watching it. And it was the face hugger part was like right when he came, like right around the time he came in, because he had been playing the game and he just kind of wandered in to ask me something or whatever, but he didn't leave, because as he came in, it was literally like the face hugger scene in the closed off room.
Mm-hmm.
And then right after that, now I guess enough time. It was a ways, but I remember the reaction that I like heard his mouth drop and looked over it was the when the first time you see the egg, it was like open up
in front of Newt. Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And then as Ripley is carrying Newt, and then they just pause, and the shot sits on on Ripley's face for like a good 15 seconds before it finally reveals to you what she's looking at, and she's just surrounded by all the eggs.
Right.
And then the cinematography in the Queen scene is just, now that I'm talking about it, is probably some of my favorite, because it pans over the eggs to the what do you call it, the abdominal,
like the sack or whatever you want to call it.
It's like a sack. It's like to the, and then it slowly follows it, and you could just see like Owen was like, it was weird looking, because it didn't look like it looked almost like there was this arm, kind of like the Matrix, especially now that we have the Matrix and they've seen those, like that was just putting these eggs, and like, what is this thing? And then it follows it all the way, and then you start to see the legs, and that it's actually attached to an alien, and that whole reveal is just, and then you have the aliens on the side. I remember putting myself, when that scene was happening in the theater, as if being an audience member who hadn't, Alien 3 wasn't out.
Right.
Like maybe I'd seen the first one, maybe I hadn't, but I was just seeing this for the first time and just being like, thinking how I think my first thought would be, movies are so good right now.
Yeah. The whole concept of the Queen, I love that they thought to ask that question, and I think they even ask it in the movie. But it's, in the first movie, Kane finds those eggs.
Yes.
And nobody questions that in the first movie, but really you think about it, and I'm glad, obviously James Cameron, I guess, or somebody thought, well, who laid those eggs?
Right.
And so somebody put it together and thought, well, there has to be like a queen or something.
Right.
And so, yeah, the queen is the coolest looking alien.
It's like the termite queen, because the termite queen actually has that big, like, I don't remember, like whatever it's called. It's not an abdomen, but it's like,
right,
or maybe I don't know, but you know what I'm talking about. So I would imagine that the queen was kind of inspired just by that,
probably
nasty termite queen.
Yeah, probably.
In fact, there's another thing. You probably, I would imagine, never played StarCraft.
I don't think I ever did play StarCraft.
Yeah. Well, I played some StarCraft, and it is a very big game. I'm sure several of our listeners have played some StarCraft. And the alien, there's like these creatures called Zerg in the game. Mm-hmm. Definitely inspired by aliens. Then there's the Protoss. Those are like Predator. Mm-hmm. And then there's the Terran, which are heavily inspired, I would say, by the aliens, the human, technology and society of the Alien movie, because they kind of replicate, or it kind of has that, but also there's 2 or 3 lines in StarCraft of one of the units. It's the transport dropship, and she says like 2 or 3 lines from Aliens the same way. Like one of them is like in the pipe 5x5, and then the other one is we're heading for some chop. That's the other one. It seems like there might be one more, but yeah. Anyway, this movie clearly had, and StarCraft came out in 1997 or 8, and so that would have been like 10 years after this movie, which we were talking about time.
You're right.
And clearly 10 years after this movie, just people were already replicating, like putting it in their games.
Sure.
So it's pretty cool.
I mean, this movie I think was huge, and I think there, obviously there's a lot of big fans of it, and so I wouldn't be surprised if the StarCraft. I mean, it sounds like whoever the StarCraft developers were, or whatever, were big Aliens fans, and so they threw those little Easter eggs in there. That's cool. One of the notes I wrote was I thought it was really interesting how intelligent they made the Queen. You know, we hadn't really. I mean, we saw a little bit of how intelligent aliens in general could be from the first movie. In this movie, we don't really see it from any of the aliens other than the ones crawling in the ceiling. You know, they were able to, rather than come the normal way into the room, they went above. But most of the shots of the aliens in this movie, they're real quick. They're jumping out of places and getting blown up and stuff. So I thought it was interesting to see the intelligence of the Queen when Ripley burns some of the eggs or whatever, and the Queen kind of freaks out, and then Ripley like holds the flame towards a couple of the other eggs.
Right.
And the Queen like looks over at some of the aliens, and they kind of back away so that Newton and Ripley can leave. But then, of course, Ripley just then burns them all anyway, which upsets the Queen. And the Queen learns how to use an elevator, which I thought was interesting too.
Yeah, I gave it a pass because I don't know. I did it because I remember that came up. Like, one of my kids asked how did they use an elevator, and I was like, well, they're not dumb creatures,
right?
That was another moment. There was a line where Newt gets taken. We were talking about the sewer scene, and Ripley is highly, like, she's confident that Newt is still alive because she says they don't kill you,
right? They
don't kill you. So I was thinking, wait a minute, does that mean that we don't have to be scared of aliens? Because, like, when you think of an alien coming at you, oh, they're just coming to kidnap me.
Right. Well, you eventually die, though, because
but
the chest bursters and stuff. Yeah.
As long as I got a knife, I'll just cut myself out and
right.
I'll get out of there.
I'll be on my way.
But I was like, no, they do kill because one killed the pilot for no reason.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
So I was like, Ripley, you're wrong.
Ripley is wrong. I think Ripley was maybe kind of
trying to talk herself.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe saying it to herself more than anything.
But I think she there is something to it because she's right. They take you and then they put you
I mean, most
of
the colonists were taken
right
and put on the walls or whatever, because that's where all those, at one point in the movie, I think it's Hudson finds like all the personal data, whatever, that's putting off a signal. Like every colonist is supposed to have one of these personal data transmitters or something, and they find them and they're all in one location. And I remember one of the characters going, what are they having, a town hall meeting or something? And it's because all the aliens had taken all those people and put them in that one area and plastered them against the walls to be.
I don't remember that line. Yeah,
hosts for.
That's pretty cool.
So that's what I think Ripley is going with. So in a sense, she's correct.
Right.
But also you're right. We've seen these aliens kill people for no reason really, or just because they're, in their territory. I do like that scene with the transport. The guy, the pilot says something, about to the other guy. She's like, get on board. So he runs up and then puts his hand in like some of the, I'm guessing it's like saliva or something, and he's like,
oh, yeah.
What? And she's like, hurry it up. And he's like, all right. And he closes it up. And then, I like, she gets killed and the whole plane crash. That's the one scene where, the effects don't quite hold up anymore. You can kind of tell it's like, it's a cool shot. I like it still, where you see the transport crashing and kind of tumbling towards our heroes, and they are like kind of jumping out of the way, but you can very much tell it is a kind of rear projection type thing.
Right.
There's another shot like that later on with Ripley and Newt, I think. But fast forwarding to the end, the whole scene with Ripley in the rig, I don't know what you call it, the forklift type rig, and fighting the Queen, and then Bishop getting ripped apart. That is what I think of when I think of Aliens. That whole sequence of her fighting the Queen in that rig.
Oh yeah.
Bishop saving the day and then getting torn apart. That is Aliens to me. And I love how the Queen gets sucked out the airlock or whatever you want to call it. But that is another part that doesn't quite hold up, just because we know, you can't just open up a door to space and be okay.
It does show her determination, though.
Yeah.
Like she's climbing up, and
Right.
she does such a good job of just representing an absolute hero for the story. Like she's if Ripley is there, you're probably going to be okay.
Right.
And she delivers that, and it's believable. Like,
Yeah.
I love it.
This was like, I remember in the first movie, Ripley, it's like the first half of the movie, Ripley's not like the main character.
Right.
And
it was like at least 30 minutes,
Yeah.
until they start doing stuff with her.
Right. And then it's not really until like the last half hour of the movie that it's like just her and the alien, and she's kind of the star of the film. Whereas in this movie, she is the star of the film. And she's the hero of the story, and she does a fantastic job.
And it's kind of like it reminds me once again of Terminator, which is fine because both Terminator and Alien are just great. So, but he took the damsel, and there's and it both happens to be Michael Biehn.
Right. Yeah.
But he's like the knight, but he's like the damsel becomes the heroine, and just kind of, and then they work together.
Mm-hmm.
And she like ends up being in both these stories, the one that is the final come through, which was really cool. Like it was done well both times.
Yeah, I agree. The only other note I wrote has to do with one of Newt's lines, which I think about all the time. Like, if I ever say the word mostly in a sentence, I tend to say it again at the end of the sentence. There's a line where she says, we should get going soon. She's like, the sun's going down, and they mostly come out at night. Mostly. So I find myself saying that sometimes if I ever say the word, if I'm ever like, well, it's mostly blah, 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 then I'll go, mostly. Just because it's...
In a British accent?
Yeah, exactly. Mostly. I don't know. That's funny. I just like that line. They mostly come out at night. Mostly.
Yeah.
I think, real quick, just James Cameron did a good job, too, of making it believable that Newt managed to survive. Like, I know, in no point in this movie am I like,
good point.
I don't believe it. I don't believe that this little girl survived all this time. Like, I think I believe it. Whereas, the same kind of thing happens.
She bites Hudson's hand.
Right, yeah. She almost becomes kind of almost like a feral child to a point. But I also believe that she's seen some stuff,
Right.
Like, because she's clearly got like PTSD basically when Ripley first finds her. The thing that I was going to compare it to, and I don't know how much you remember this, but in Jurassic Park 3, there's a kid in that movie that is like basically living on his own on the island with these dinosaurs, and it's just so not believable that this kid would survive so long on Jurassic Park. So this was a movie where they did it correctly, I think.
Yeah. I said it was Hudson, but it was she bites Hicks's hand.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Wish we had talked a little bit more about the end fighting sequence, but like you wrapped it up fine. Like it's like you said, that whole sequence is just what a wrap up of an already great movie, and it just delivers and doesn't become cheesy, and I think there's partial luck to that, like
sure. I mean, I could definitely see, James Cameron being like, okay, Ripley's going to use this forklift rig contraption that moves very slowly to fight this queen.
Right.
I could see
it
that.
Could have just been.
It could have been a disaster. Yeah, exactly. But it doesn't. It works. It works really well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, but I do attribute a lot of the talent to James Cameron and his team, and and luck. I would say any movie, be it Jurassic Park or Star Wars, whatever, like these movies, everything fits so well, or even just little things that don't fit can kind of, take away from the quality of the work. And this is one of those movies that everything's just awesome. Everything just worked so well, and it is a absolute classic movie.
Yeah.
And I will go ahead and rate it.
Yeah, as you say, that being said, go ahead. Give it.
I'll say, of course, 5 stars out of 5.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm total agreement. It's 5-star movie. I mean, it is. It's amazing. And I love pretty much every second of it. So I can't deny giving it 5 stars. So yeah, I agree with you. Well, we'd love to know what you think about Aliens. You can always leave us a comment on our website, cinemaheroes.com. You can tweet at us on Twitter at cinemaheroes. That's also our Instagram handle. You can leave us a comment on our Facebook page, facebook.com/SM and SM Podcast. And, of course, this video is on YouTube. And if you're watching it on YouTube, thank you. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And leave us a comment on the video, of course. We'd love to hear from you any way you want to reach out to us. But I think that about wraps it up for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.